Welcome everyone to Burlington City Arts. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's a very exciting, auspicious day. I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Fran Stoddard. Fran is a good friend of all the arts. She's been a board member at BCA and many other institutions and organizations in our community. She's a media producer and a wonderful person. Fran Stoddard.
Thank you so much, Doreen, and thank you for hosting us here. This is terrific. So I want to welcome you all to the 2025 Herb Lockwood Prize in the Arts. This is the 12th year that the Herb Lockwood Prize has been awarded to one of Vermont's most influential artists, musicians, writers, or other creative individuals. And for those not familiar with the Herb Lockwood Prize, I'd like to just give you a quick summary. Herb Lockwood moved to Vermont in 1982 after graduating from Hamilton College. Tragically, he died only 5 years later in a work accident right here in Burlington. He was a classically trained musician. He was a composer, a cartoonist, a painter, a writer, and a woodworker, and a very inspirational human being. His impact on the region's art and artists has proved to be enduring and profound. His influence on other artists in all manner of disciplines created a legacy that remains inspirational for all these decades. The Herb Lockwood Prize seeks to recognize a person of comparable creativity and influence. Every year, the Herb Lockwood Prize goes about its business, staying completely below the radar. There's no application process. The artists have no idea that they're being considered for it, except the one person each year who gets a surprise phone call. Might not be from Sweden at 2 a.m, but it's very significant to our community here. The Burlington Arts Foundation is honored to administer the prize, created through the generosity of a number of private donors. This year, we'd like to thank the following donors who helped make the 2025 Herb Lockwood Prize possible. Todd R. Lockwood, who is also, of course, the founder of this wonderful prize. David C. Lockwood, David A. Lockwood, Mike Gordon, Charlie and Mima Tipper, Pat Robbins and Lisa Schomburg, Michael Lipson, Bill Gottesman, and Deborah Lopez. So thanks to all of them. And thanks also to the Media Factory, who are here providing professional video coverage of this event. And now I'd like to welcome one of Herb Lockwood's longtime friends to the podium, Melissa Chestnut-Tangerman. Melissa and Herb's friendship began in 1978 at Hamilton College. After graduation in 1982, she was one of several musicians who followed Herb right here to Vermont. I'd like to welcome Melissa.
I'm here to talk about my friend Herb, whom I dearly miss. A long time ago, after he died in 1987, I was lamenting in a young, callow way to an older friend that one day I would be unimaginably old, like 30 years later, and I would have gotten over his loss. She said, "You'll never get over it." We get past it, of course we do, but hearing that there are some things in life that you do not get over, but that you carry like a tree bears its scars, growing bark around and height above, that you live with the mark of the scoring, the rough place where the limb was broken off. Hearing that was a gift. And now it's been 37 years. We met at Hamilton on our first day as freshmen, as we said in 1978, on the library steps where our whole class was mingling. In that melee of newness, throngs of strangers sorting ourselves socially and internally, Herb and I talked long enough to establish that we were both musicians. And then he disappeared into Bundy, a dorm at the outer edges of the campus that had its own dining hall, and so was terra incognita to the rest of the class. And our paths didn't cross again, really, until sophomore year, when we each joined the co-op dorm, an unabashedly hippie haven, where we bought and cooked our own food and so created community. By our senior year, Herb and I were close, officers of the co-op, making music, hanging out. Herb asked me to join his band. And when we graduated, he and his girlfriend Martha and another band member, Owen, and I shared an apartment on South Willard Street around a corner from his brother Todd, who handily had a recording studio. The band experiment was short-lived. I was headed for Peace Corps and Herb and Martha for marriage, but the music we made was good. From covers of Neil Young and The Dead, Herb pushed us to make original music. As he was the only one writing at the time, we had the privilege of making his music, which thankfully lives on. Herb's music is like him, experimental, quirky, innovative, complicated, humorous, deep. When I think of Herb at that time, that amazing end of adolescence time when we create and recreate ourselves, I'm struck by how he was fledging. The names he chose for his enterprises reflect that. Severance for the band, Winged 20 for his woodworking. And he was winged. Herb's family nest was steeped in tradition, and in our friendship, deepened over many letters between Burlington and Kenya, he wrote how it was for him to confront and confound the expectations that family can have. He had to be true to the artist in himself. He had to be courageous. Herb's nature was shy, even reticent, and he loved people. His creativity and humor burbled out of him. The doodles and cartoons he made from an early age, the music he wrote and made, his full descriptive letters, the fine woodwork he crafted at the end of his life, the little notes he would leave, or the postcards he sent. I have two examples here. This is from Burlington to Wamba, Kenya. Mel, I'm almost positive you gave me Wolfman's address, but I can't find it, and I just wrote her a letter, and you're the only person I know who would have it, and I know that it'll probably take a long time for her to get this letter at the rate we're going, due to my request and your reply, perhaps taking up to a month or even more, at which time the letter will have lost its spontaneity, and I will have decided that some parts are just too silly to send to a nice person whom I don't know very well, and I'll just end up throwing it away. Love, Herb. And then this one, he sent when he and his partner Jane were doing a cross-country tour in 1987. This is, I'll tell you in a second. You guys, sit on New England. Let's move here. So Winslow is politically conservative and in an extreme, but the land is enormous. These unfolding open spaces really clear out my head. Empty it, in fact. Last week, I emptied my head and became the Grand Canyon. It was a nice sensation. I was a mile deep, cut in two. See you soon in Burlington. Good love, Herb. Herb was burgeoning in Burlington, finding community and a leadership role at the UU, branching out, taking risks in friendship and in his art, falling in love. So often, it's the newly fledged, fully flying for the first time in their life who are plucked too soon from it. But that's not the only poignancy of Herb's early departure. It's what lives on. The vibrant memories in his many friends, the literal vibration of his music that still inspires, the unfinished story of this marvelously creative individual whose work this world won't know, but who touches others still through those of us who hold him in our hearts and through this award. We'll never know Herb as an old man, but I am sure that his youthful spirit, his enthusiastic yah of discovery, Oreos smushed in ice cream, of a punk folk chord progression, of mastering a new skill, the joy he found in making a living with his hands would erupt into his conversation today. I hope you can feel it.
Great, thank you, Melissa. In 2024, the Herb Lockwood Prize was awarded to Vermont musician, composer, arranger, the incredibly talented Michael Chorney. He's best known for helping bring Anais Mitchell's folk opera, Hadestown, from Vermont to the Walter Kerr Theater on Broadway, where it has won numerous Tony Awards. Michael Chorney has a long history of inspiring Vermont musicians and songwriters to reach their fullest potential. Today we are delighted to have Michael Charney with us to share some thoughts about his last year and winning the Herb Lockwood Prize. Michael.
Thank you. Well, a little more than a year ago, I was approached by a colleague, a bandmate, Matt LaRocca, who's a great viola player and a great composer in his own right. And he's in my group, Freeway Clyde, and he had a really unusual proposal. He wanted to arrange the music I write, which is for a 6-piece electric improvisational ensemble. He wanted to arrange it for string quartet and piano. And it was a really exciting prospect. And we got together, talked about it. He brought some sketches. And so we met a few times. We drew up a budget. And we said, this is exciting. How the heck are we going to do this? And of course, the creative work on my part and his part, we were excited to do, but we would need to pay musicians and pay for a studio because he wanted to make a recording of it. And after our second meeting, we were like, well, let's think of how we can make this work, because it was a really exciting prospect. 2 days later, I got that phone call. And it was pretty incredible timing. So we're going into the studio in 2 weeks. It just feels really great to actually kind of pay it forward to bring other musicians in together with this work. And I don't know, it just feels like a really appropriate use of this great resource and a great way to honor Herb and the prize itself. So, and that was a year ago, and a lot's changed in a year. We know that. I'm not alone in wondering how a string quartet might fit in this current world, what its worth is in terms of what we face. But last night, as I was thinking about that, I think just the very act of making art requires courage and imagination, and those two things alone can combat a lot. So I take that thought and I find inspiration from it. I hope this year's winner does as well as finding the great inspiration that I did in the validation and support that this prize brings. So congratulations to this year's winner. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Michael. Hear, hear. I'd now like to welcome a journalist, fiction writer, a long time, even longer, goes back further than Melissa's. I think preschool, maybe, with her? 1962. The thread is long. Stephen is, that would be Stephen Kiernan. Stephen is the author of numerous acclaimed novels, including The Baker's Secret, The Hummingbird, The Curiosity, Universe of Two, and The Glass Chateau. And he's coming out with another one soon, this fall, I think. I would like to please bring to the podium Herb's longtime friend, Steve Kiernan.
Hi, great to see you here for a great event. I want to start with a little bit of a look in the past and just ask if you would imagine with me kind of a bohemian dinner party at 189 North Winooski Avenue. That's the house Herb was renting 40 years ago. The meal is lentil soup, but it has every possible ingredient added to it that you can imagine. Potatoes, celery, carrots, chicken, turnips, garlic, onions, curry, on and on and on. Afterward, everyone crowds into the tiny living room of that house, and Herb begins to hand out musical instruments. But he has a rule. No one receives an instrument they know how to play. We've got people playing the flute for the first time, bass, harmonica, guitar. I was handed a mandolin. It's a very small space for my fat fingers. At first, it's cacophony. And yet, surprisingly, in a little while, a rhythm starts to take shape. And then there are notes starting to get strung together and repeating in sort of a melody. And in no time at all, music is happening. Now, this is Herb's bell ringing, and bringing people together and trusting them to experiment and discover, and watching them exceed themselves. I share this memory because perhaps more than any prior year, it draws a straight line to this year's winner of the prize in Herb's name. The award seeks to recognize two things: a body of work that is superior to the norm, and a sustained effort to uplift other artists and build community through art. The artist winning the prize this year provides the idea for a giant painting, the context, the ingredients, and then the invitation to people to engage, the security for these participants to take risks, and a rock-solid faith that the outcome of their effort will be of lasting value. The results are amazing. This year's winner works in two forms. First, paint. He is a former aerosol artist and student of graffiti art who now makes large-scale murals in public places. It has taken Western culture many years to recognize and value this sort of work. Keith Haring and Banksy were groundbreakers globally, but now there are, for example, 3 books of photographs of wall paintings in Burlington. The books matter because they document art that may well vanish due to weather, the mural's wall being knocked down, or vandalism and tagging that disrespects the real thing. These books also display a changing culture. We are learning, even here in mostly rural Vermont. We begin to know better, and it takes artists to lead us. So this year's winner of the prize was a first-generation college student at the College of New Jersey, where he studied fine art and illustration. Later, he was mentored by the legendary graffiti artist Daniel Pose II Hopkins, subsequently as an assistant to Dave McShane, a resident artist at Mural Arts Philadelphia. Our winner refined his work in large-scale mural production. His leadership with art included taking the violence and struggles of his origin community, exploring the rich history of the African diaspora in America, and using large-scale works and bright colors that leap from the murals to create what he calls Afrofuturistic characters, stories and images of powerful hope and positivity. His murals are explorations of Black identity from the perspective of justice and joy. Those colors and that spirit have a powerful impact, and with the size of his canvases, his style and content are identifiable from a long way off. His second art form is humanity. He does not make these large-scale works on his own. Instead, he invites people, engages them, creates a small village of artists, both experienced and brand new, people local to the work who will see it every day and are welcomed into the process from conception to unveiling. The result is a unique artwork for which the whole community shares authorship and pride. The design and content are dependably brilliant and original, in part because they contain the vulnerability that comes from valuing the contribution of every participant. In Trenton, he founded an organization to reimagine the potential of graffiti art as a tool for inner-city beautification. He founded and led SAGE, a nonprofit arts collective that created dozens of outdoor murals on abandoned buildings in New Jersey. At Princeton University, he worked with students to develop and paint a mural that reflected the college's changing community. Princeton is far more diverse and energetic than it used to be. How do you tell that story in a work of art? Then he came to Vermont, where there were lots of ingredients eager to jump in the soup. This artist worked with students at Burlington High School, for example, to create paintings that they felt reflected both the community and the values they felt were most important to portray. Here's what the students had to say afterward. These are quotes. "I have never worked on a mural or done any artwork outside of a class at BHS. Working with him helped me to make a stronger connection to our classroom values and learn about the purpose and power of art." Here's another one. "It was cool because I had never seen myself as an artistic person, but he made art more accessible to me. It was a good experience, especially since I've never taken an art class. Our prize winner has also been an artist in residence at the University of Vermont and Middlebury College. The second of these schools examples how his collaborative approach can be a catalyst. At Middlebury, he chose a student as his assistant. She engaged more than a dozen other students. Together, they conceptualized, designed, and painted a mural in the college's resource center, which celebrates and supports the diversity of students through mentoring, events, even a student-run hair salon. The success of that project led to additional paintings in the Student Center, again with community involvement, and then to a student-led project for additional paintings in the Alumni Center. It's easy to imagine 10 years from now when wall after wall of that college is enriched with art. Indeed, one of the Middlebury murals has a spot set aside in which future participants can list their names. One of my personal favorites resulted when this artist led a project to paint a mural on the north side of Burlington's Champlain Elementary School, a portrait of an Afronaut. It involved local benefactors, local artists, dozens of kids from the King Street Youth Center. Today you can find this artist's work at St. Michael College, the Brattleboro Library, Ripton Elementary School, Middlebury Union High School, Waterville Elementary, North Country Union High School, 40 locations in Vermont, and counting. It is an exceptional collection of lessons, stories, and skills. If we imagine Herb standing back to witness this collaboration, the rich soup of shared hopes and respect for the artist and everyone, we know that this art and this artistic process are things he would have loved. So, it is an honor to recognize this utterly unique talent, this creative artistic community, winner of the 2025 Herb Lockwood Prize, Will Kasso Condry.
Wow. That was an amazing bio. I need that for the website. Yeah, exactly. My wife, Jennifer, for the past week has been like, what are you going to say? Like, what, because going back, let me just take it back. I know I only got a few minutes, but I could be a little long with it, so I'm asking y'all to be patient. So when we got the call, what was this about? Maybe a couple months ago. Todd called my wife's phone. I never give anyone my number. I always give him her number because she's the one who handles everything. So Jennifer was like, Will, you got this message from Todd Lockwood. He said he wants to talk to you about something. I was like, well, last time I had a conversation, we talked about graffiti, so maybe we want to talk about a wall or something. I don't know. We were in the middle of a project, so our attention was really focused on, completing this project on time. So when we finally talked to Todd, he told me the nature of this award. I was in shock. I didn't even know what to say. But the one thing that kept coming to me was, I don't do this work alone. Even when I think back as a kid, I was recently telling this story to a good friend of mine. This was the summer of 1988. I was about 11 years old, and my mom signed me up for this art program. It was a free month-long, every Saturday art program for inner city kids. And I had this instructor, his name was Barry, and he was the first person to take me out to paint a wall. And I remember I painted a giant Nike swoosh. And, because I know he didn't have permission to do this in hindsight, so he was taking a risk. And then he took us to a park. And at the time, they were taking all the wooden playground equipment and modernizing it. So we painted in black and white temper paint all the wooden playground equipment, and I was hooked. I was like, yo, I need to figure out how to do this, like for real, And many years later, I would say by the time I was in college, mural arts at that time wasn't really accepted as a practice, as a comparable practice to build your life around. But I'm like, this is what I want to do. So after college, I sought the people out who can help me become a better artist and also a better person, because I knew that I wasn't very social at that time, and this is a social practice. So one of the beautiful things about this art form is that the people you meet along the way. And again, I don't do this work alone. There's many participants in this work who help bring these visions to life. And even the way I got to Vermont, through the work I was doing with my nonprofit, Sage, that started with a conversation with my niece, who at the time, in the spring of 2012, was in her sophomore year at Middlebury College. And she was like, "Unc, I love what you're doing in our community." I was starting to get national attention at that time. And she was like, "You gotta come to Vermont. You gotta come to Middlebury College." And I didn't even know what Middlebury College was. I was like, I never heard of it. I was so far away from academia because I was doing grassroots community building through arts. We would take art and cover blocks of neighborhoods that were in essence abandoned. And she was like, "You should come up to Vermont and do a talk about how you use art as a form of activism." And I almost passed up on it. And I was like, all right, if you can work with my schedule, let's make it happen. And through that trip, that's where I met my wife, Jennifer. Right? And that first meeting with Jennifer, she saw me painting live at a spoken word event that she put together called Verbal Onslaught. And we hung out that entire night and just talking about life, art, and right there she put me to work designing her a tattoo. She never got it, but but she kept the photo even after I lost the original drawing. And needless to say, 4 years later, we started dating. And during that time, my tenure with Sage was coming to an end. And it was hard because I had put so many years into building it up, and I had hit a ceiling. And so Jennifer, through hours and hours and hours of conversation, would hear me complain about the things that I couldn't control and the things that I wanted to achieve. And she would just listen patiently. And at the end of every conversation, she was like, "You can move to Vermont." And I was like, "Well, what am I going to do in Vermont? I'm a street artist, very urban, very black, and I didn't see anything in Vermont that resembled that." So I took a trip out here in September 2016, and needless to say, I was hooked on Jennifer and Vermont, mostly Jennifer. So, so when I decided to move here, one of the first collaborations, believe it or not, was a piece of street art. And that's when Jennifer and Alexa, our daughter who's sitting in the back, raise your hand, Alexa, so everybody know you are, we all collaborated on this piece of street art. And Alexa challenged me. She was like, I drew a picture, I wanted to paint an image of No Face from the Miyazaki film Spirited Away, if y'all familiar with it. And my reasons were very basic. I was like, I just like the character design. I just want to do a quick piece of street art to just kind of like, put my stamp on my hometown, like this is the last piece I'm going to do here. But Alexa challenged me. She was like, "No, you have to understand who No Face is and what he represents." So I had to do my research. I was like, all right, I got to take a step back here. And it was a challenge to my ego, And so back then, when I was doing street art heavily, I had one rule. If anyone wanted to collaborate with me, they had to take a wall with me, which means you had to basically come out with me and paint an abandoned building with no permission. It was the only way I could feel I could trust you creatively. And Jennifer decided to take a trip with me to paint said wall. And I was like, all right, she's real serious. Like, she wants to do this. We were already together at this point. So she didn't have anything to prove. But I started to feel bad because I'm like, well, in essence, I have her doing something with me that she don't necessarily have permission for. Well, we didn't have any permission for. And I was like, man, if I get arrested, I can't have this woman losing her job on my behalf to paint some wall that don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But she decided, like, no, it'd be fun. And, right? So I did this wall, and through Alexa, I made sure that the character represented something greater than what I originally had in mind. And that was gentrification, how spaces are taken over by corporations and how they use artists to rebuild things. And at the end of the day, artists and people in the community are priced out. And I wanted to talk about that. So I use No Face as a representation of gentrification, because if you know anything about the character, he consumes, and in return, he gives false hopes, false gold, false wealth. And Jennifer was out there with me painting right along, assisting me in this wall, and the cops came. And when the cops showed up, they knew who I was because I have a reputation of doing that and I've never been arrested. And because I always had a plan and a purpose for what I'm doing, not just to just do it. And the cop was like, you know, I'd rather see what you're doing than all this crap around here. Proceed. And I looked at Jennifer and some of the other people who were out there with us, and I was like, well, we got to finish. It's getting dark. And that wall, 8 years later, is still up to this day, untouched. And the building, unfortunately, is still abandoned. But, you know, at that point, I was like, our collaborations are going to be beautiful as long as we can keep this energy of spontaneity and fun. Because where I grew up, there wasn't much expected of me or people that came from my hometown. But I knew at a very young age, through my mother, who said that art was the only thing that would keep me still. So she encouraged it, whether it was comic books, coloring books. We always, for some reason, had endless amounts of construction paper. I don't know why. There was so much everywhere. And she was like, it's the only thing that keeps you still, and I'm going to encourage it. You know, all the art classes, anything that revolved art as a child, my mother was the guiding light in that. So even going back, I never did this work alone. I've always had people who supported me and encouraged me to be better. And moving here was the best thing that I could have done for myself and my family. And Jennifer needs to be up here with me accepting this award, because without her, I wouldn't be here right now. Come on. Come on. Yeah. She's modest, y'all. You know, Juniper Creative, even going back to graffiti, when we started this work together, mind you, the murals that we did at Middlebury, Princeton, Jennifer was right there with me. And I knew that she needed to see herself in this work if we were going to continue these collaborations. So it was the fall of 2019. I remember I was home in my studio, or cleaning my studio, because we had just moved the year before and it was a wreck. So I'm cleaning my studio, and I was like, when I'm cleaning, I get my best ideas. So I remember texting her. I was like, hey, if you were a graffiti writer, what would your name be? And she thought about it. She was like, Juniper. I was like, why Juniper? She was like, well, that was my nickname as a kid. My mom named me after an old folk song by this artist by the name of Donovan. She told me the whole story. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. And so I wrote it down, Juniper. So I started thinking about it, Juniper art, no, Juniper Creative. Wrote that down, Juniper Creative. I was like, hey, how does Juniper Creative sound as a business name? Because we had been talking for the better part of a year of what our business would look like. And she was like, oh my God, I love it. So when Jennifer came home that evening, I was like, hey, I need you to write Juniper out, because I love the way she makes her J's. So she wrote it on a sheet of paper, and I took that and turned it into our logo. So the J in our logo is based off of the J that she just uses to write and sign everything, including our checks. But I say that again, that, you know, art has brought everything to me that I ever wanted in life, and it's helped me get through everything that I couldn't possibly imagine. I don't know what I would do without it. And accepting this award, you know, on behalf of Herb Lockwood, and just, I love the way y'all keep his name and spirit alive. It's sacred, it's special. And I think we all can learn a little something from that. Because as an artist, it's not just about the work you make, but it's about the people you meet along the way and the effect those people have on your body of work. And my art is a social practice. I knew at a very young age this is what I wanted to do. I just didn't know exactly how I would get there. And I had some high roads and some very low ones. And the one thing that, you know, our practice keeps us is grounded in the natural world, the spiritual world, and a very modern one. And times, as Bob Dylan say, are changing. But the one thing I always said, and I remember saying this when we were at the height of the pandemic, is like, you know, when life gets difficult, just sit down and open up a sketchbook and illustrate your life and what you want it to be. Because the only way we know of civilizations that came before us is because of the art that was left behind. So I'm a firm believer that art can change the world. We have a saying, liberation through imagination. So wherever you can't figure out where you're going next, maybe it's this time to read a book or listen to some poetry, some good music, watch a good movie. Let the arts take control and through that, we can figure out how to move forward. But I don't sit here and act like I have all the answers. I just teach and I tell people what works and what has worked for me. And it's about keeping art in my center. And through that, you could change anything that you're facing in life. So with that being said, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Todd. Much respect to your brother and his spirit is still alive and well. Even Jennifer and I when y'all were sharing stories, we was like, wow, he sounded like a really awesome dude. We probably would invite him over for dinner and hung out, you know? And that whole playing the instrument thing, like, that's cool. Like, that's something I could see myself being really happy and having a lot of fun doing, because art should be fun. It shouldn't be something that is stressful. It should be what you do to relieve stress. So thank you all for being here. I'm honored, you know, I really am. And I just hope we continue to do right by the spirit of why this award has been given. Thank you.
Yeah. So, congratulations,
Thank you.
Will.
Thank you.
And here we have the Herb Lockwood Prize.
Wow. Is that one of his drawings?
No, that was
Okay.
done by a guy named Anthony Cini here in
Yeah.
Burlington. He's,
Nice.
Artist, graphic artist extraordinaire. And then we have something else here. Yep, $10,000.
Wow. 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 Thank you. Thank you so much. Jennifer, we going to Disneyland. The Studio Ghibli. Yeah, Alexa, you coming too.
Take that with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Right.
So thank you, everyone, for making the trek. I know some of you came from some distance to get here today, and it's always great. I mean, it's funny. Every year, we walk away from this saying, "Wow, it's such a great thing to do," and we're going to keep it up. So come and see us again next year at this time. And help yourselves. There's goodies over here.